A legendary weekend in the Lou. PGA Tour champions compete in the Stifel Charity Classic, presented by Compliance Solutions, September 4th through 7th, and COAR. Perform live with your Friday ticket. Visit StifelCharityClassic.com today.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday and welcome to Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm with the man, myth, legend, St. Louis's very own Ethan Hannaford. Ethan, how you doing?
It's a pleasure as always, Luke. You know, it's kind of weird. It's a Saturday. We're in August and we don't have Cardinals baseball. So I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit, but it just feels weird. But regardless, no Cardinals baseball. That doesn't mean that Card Central 365 does not live on. We are still here, baby, and good to be here.
Yeah, never heard of the Cardinals canceling a game with the Battlehawks doing battle across town, but that's the state of baseball in Tampa, Florida. Minor League Stadium, Steinbrenner Field, and then the Crew, capital K, across the street, Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting a preseason game. And Rays fans basking in a 10-6 win last night with shortstop Carson Williams coming up, tearing the cover off the ball against starting pitcher Miles Mikolas. It's Miles' birthday today. I'm not going to say any cross words about him. Happy 37th, Mr. Sage. However, got hit pretty hard last night.
37th? He's that old?
Yeah, only 15 years older than you and I are.
Oh, my goodness. 37 years old. Miles, we love you. We appreciate you. I know it's been a bumpy final last contract here, but there's a lot of good memories in there mixed as well. So happy birthday, Miles! And too bad it is a shame that he wasn't able to get a little bit of a better birthday present for himself last night. But you mentioned it before we hopped on. What a weird ballpark Steinbrenner Field is. I mean, in these first two games, you've seen multiple things where you're just like, it's just weird. You know, first off, playing outdoors in Florida, you're bound to have the ball carrying out of the ballpark time and time again. And we saw a lot of home runs over these first couple of games. What a tough situation the Tampa Bay Rays are in right now. At least the guys on the field, I should say, having to play their 81 home games at a AAA ballpark.
Yeah, MLB front-loaded Tampa's schedule with a bunch of home games in the first half, and then Commissioner Rob Manfred comes out and announces that the Rays will play all their postseason games at Steinbrenner Field. Granted, there's an 11,000 fan seating capacity or whatever, and most of those tickets would have been allocated anyway. But right now, the Rays aren't playing for the playoffs. They have fallen considerably out of the wild card race, and it's not happening for them this year. So they call up number 47 overall prospect Carson Williams, who gets his first major league hit off of Miles Mikolas, an RBI single past Mason Wynn with the infield drawn in, gave the Rays a 4-1 lead, and then later torches his first career home run as well. So it has been a good couple of a good day for Rays fans and for Cardinals fans. They got to see Nathan Church, with his first major league home run as well. A 1-1 slider low, cranked it to right center field. 414 off the bat. As you mentioned, the ball travels really well. It carries, but this is a Mickey Mouse field. I do a show out with some buds on the East Coast, and we've covered this stadium and this team already this season. And man, it is a lot of. It just plays really weird. The dimensions mimic Yankee Stadium because it is a Yankees farm system ballpark at the end of the day. And yeah, for the Cardinals, get in, get out. You got a Sunday morning game, and that'll be that.
You know, you look back as to how big that Williams home run actually was. The Cardinals at one point trailing 7-1, I believe, for them to get back into the ball game in part because of that 414-foot Nathan Church home run, 104 exit velo. It looked pretty good hack there by the Cardinal rookie. But the Cardinals were able to get within one run at that point, and then Williams, goes berserk on this ball, 410, 104.7 off the bat, and pretty much to dead center field. That was a big moment in the game because not entirely at that point, especially at that ballpark, like you said, the way the ball carries, the game doesn't ever feel over. Both of these games, it's kind of felt like that. But that was a big moment to give them some much needed insurance in the later innings of the game. It's cool on the broadcast to always, the family's there and they're going crazy. You talk about moments that are just special baseball moments, but like a family is also having like a absolute core memory. Success, we know, is never guaranteed in sports, let alone in professional sports, let alone in the hardest professional sport, I would argue. So cool moment right there. But also just a big moment in the game in general. Like I said, because of that insurance that it provided the Rays, to a certain extent, it kind of felt like all that work to get to that point, to be back in it, and now to be 3 runs behind, kind of felt like almost a salutations to a certain extent.
Right. Carson Williams was the number 28 overall pick in the 2021 draft, just 10 picks before the Cardinals with the number 18 selection there. 10 picks prior, the Cardinals took Michael McGreevy. So interesting how those two careers have lined up.
Yeah.
It's just tells you what could have been. Multiple plate appearances last night. The Cardinals had a mound visit before Williams went up to the plate, and his walk-up song is Wonderwall by Oasis, who are actually on tour right now in the UK. And so the camera would have an ISO shot on Williams while, they were talking to Ryan Fernandez or whoever else on the mound. And he's just mouthing the lyrics to Wonderwall as he walks up to the plate, which I thought was kind of silly. It does bring up a quote that
good taste.
I've always been a Blur fan. I respect Oasis, and certainly like Slide Away. It's a banger of a song. The first 2 albums by Oasis, boom, got it. But when you're talking about body of work, I will stand Blur till the day I die. Never caught on in the United States. I know for a long time, the Blues had Song 2 by Blur as their win victory song, and it was never their goal song. They always had the organ play, but I remember for a long time Song 2 by Blur. Let's just dig into the comments. Sweets says, who is Chaim Bloom's, incoming president of baseball operations, top priority to extend this offseason? I feel like Mason Wynn is a must, but what about Brendan Donovan? I get the sense he wants out. That is Sweets commenting his opinion. Do you get that sense, Ethan Hannaford?
The only reason as to why I feel like I don't think there's anything in season we've seen from Brendan Donovan that would give you an idea that he wants out. The only thing I feel like you could base that kind of take on is the arbitration settlement, I guess you could say, that occurred at the beginning of the year, where all of a sudden all of these things that Brendan Donovan had been told by the organization made him unique, made him an important piece. Now those were being used as, cons against him, that this is what made him less valuable. And, he handled it like a pro's pro, but I remember in some of those spring training and camp meetings, interviews, him talking about how, it was hard to hear some of those things. And he opened up about how, he felt a little bit jaded, I think. I don't think he used that specific word, but he also said he understood it's part of the game and it's how this process goes. And like I said, he was a pro's pro about it, in Sweets saying, exactly the arbitration. So we are on the same page here, which is good. Outside of that, Brendan Donovan speaks so highly of this organization, and even in that meeting, he or even in those interviews at the beginning of the year, he did as well. I don't have any reason as of now to believe that Brendan Donovan wants out. Now, I think depending on how the offseason negotiations go, there could be a world in which, if back-to-back seasons, especially after Brendan Donovan just produced his best year at the major league level, all-star, I see a world where if the Cardinals don't handle it correctly, Brendan Donovan could say, okay, this is bad. This is 2 years in a row where I feel like I've been jaded. I could see how that could sour the relationship. But part of me wonders with new upper management coming in, if it'll be almost like a refreshed relationship. I know obviously John Mozeliak is not the only one that is a part of that negotiation progress, but when you have a new face, part of me wonders if that will be almost like a hitting the reset, hitting the refresh button for a relationship like that. You know, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, Luke, because I'm very curious and intrigued as to what they're going to do with Brendan Donovan as well. Up until several weeks ago, I would have said, surefire, Brendan Donovan is the guy to extend. Guarantee it. Now I'm starting to wonder a little bit. I'm curious as to what the Cardinals think their timetable for competing is again, being a legitimate contender. And while Brendan Donovan would most definitely serve his purpose in this in-between time until they get back to that point, you could make the argument if Donnie is expected to get what? Probably 4 to 6, more realistically 4 to 5 years. They'd have to pay him a little bit of money. He'd probably get between 80 and 100 million if I had to guess. Maybe he's more so on the 80 to 90. If I had to guess for 4 to 5 years, that's a lot of money for this organization to be spending right now. I know they have some big contracts coming off the books, but that's still a lot of money. Part of me wonders if they look at that amount of money potentially to be spent and they say, I don't know if it's worth it if we don't think that we're going to be in a state to compete until his 4th year, where he's going to be, 32 at that point, where the success isn't necessarily as guaranteed for a guy that plays his style of baseball. So earlier in the year, I would have said Brendan Donovan for sure. I still think there's a good chance that Brendan Donovan gets extended because still he's the heartbeat of the St. Louis Cardinals team, in my opinion. But I think Mason Wynn's only going to continue to get more and more valuable every year. So I think you have to lock him up at some point. At this point, I'm probably saying it's going to be one of those two guys. What do you think about this, Luke?
I'm going to, first of all, highlight Mason Windu here on YouTube, who comments, if it takes $80 to $100 million to sign Donovan, there's no way he gets extended. And this, in my view, is the correct take. If you're talking $100 million for Brendan Donovan, who's a very good player, versatile, plays all the positions, hits at an above average clip, is an all-star, $100 million for that bat over 4 to 5 years smacks of Dallas Cowboys, paying a little bit too much for good. Brendan Donovan's a very good player. Is he an elite game changer? Is he winning playoff series? Is he the superstar who's head and shoulders above the rest of your position player crew? No, he's very good. And he's a good player. He is, as you said, the heartbeat. He's got good skills. I was talking last night with Sarah Daly on the postgame show, which, by the way, you should definitely watch. Cards 365. Like, subscribe. We're here every day. Every day. We got the Bernie Nicholas show. We've got Randy Carricker and sometimes Brooke Grimsley and sometimes Matt Rocchio and sometimes whoever we can find. Daily content. Amazing. I think that there's going to be this reckoning of a glut of position players on the infield, particularly on the left side. You got Nolan Arenado, who reportedly rejected a trade to the Houston Astros over the offseason, and his value has since diminished. Has back pains. Sucks. The situation does, not Nolan Arenado. He's great. Nolan Gorman, now playing his natural position at third. Got some throwing things to work on, but happy now. Mason Wynn. Thomas Sajaci can also play on the left side of the infield. Brendan Donovan can play everywhere. You got too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. You know what I mean? And so you've got that. Then you've got a number of people who profile better as first baseman between Contreras and Burleson. And all of this are guys, but not necessarily guys who are marquee players who are head and shoulders above the rest of the league. And that's what I'm getting at here. So in the offseason, and I'm not purporting to know what Chaim Bloom wants or doesn't want or what his thought process is. Don't know the guy. If you can dangle an all-star who's got perennial game-changing talent, who can play all the positions, this past trade deadline would have been a good time to get some supreme value back for Brendan Donovan. But into this offseason, there might be a team that's gearing up to make a deep postseason run. A Yankees, a Padres, a Dodgers, what have you, with a good glut of prospects or maybe some major league ready talent. And that could appeal to people. Hey, we got an above average hitter who's had a couple of injury concerns this year, but is a good character guy, puts his head down, does his business, kind of quiet. Some people would die for that, to plug and play. So that is my first knee-jerk reaction. I like Brendan Donovan a lot, and he is a really good hitter on this team. When it comes to competing, Ethan, these last 3 years, the Cardinals have been in maybe the worst position you can be in baseball, in that they're not elite, they're not great, and they're not terrible. They're not gunning for that number 1 or 2 lottery draft pick there. They're kind of middling. And so when Bernie on his daily show throws out the word rebuild and there's some backlash and some bad taste in your mouth from Cardinals fans, I get it. Because first of all, not here to vouch for ownership or the front office. That's not what I do. It's not how I do business. But like, what were these last 3 years supposed to be? Such this milquetoast directionless offseason where John Mozeliak is stepping down, Chaim Bloom's coming in. So don't rock the boat too much. Don't veer in one direction. So the boat's just kind of bobbing downstream without a paddle. You got Ollie Marmol going into a contract year this upcoming season. And it was like, what do we do in this offseason? Phil Maton. And that's it. So make a decision. Like, be bold, take action. Like, be in a clear direction, get all the fans on the same page. If you're going the full rebuild, if you're nuking the thing for the first time since the early 90s, great. Let us know. If you think you can turn this around and be on the precipice of deep contention in 2026, first of all, let's invest in some big pitching, get some arms in there, get a Framber Valdez or a Dylan Cease or make a trade, and then reconstruct that bullpen on the fly. Because last night was a prime example. No one gets a standout pitching award last night. Everyone had some slip-ups there. So that's my big, long-winded answer to your question, what happens to Brendan Donovan? We all got to get on the same page here.
The messaging will be one of the most important things going into this offseason that Chaim Bloom will do. Yes, he's going to be tasked with having to clear out some of the redundancy. He's going to have to give some guys some extensions. He's going to have to figure out how to move on from Nolan Arenado and how to make a deal work that ownership is going to be on board with. Messaging is just as important as all of those things, because we know that the organization relies so much on the fans, right? The ticket sales, that you have to have the fans bought in on whatever it is. And the fans are smart enough that if you are upfront with them and you follow what you said you're going to do, the fans will respect that, I think, especially with a new guy at the helm, because there is no jade, right there. It's all fresh, it's all new. If you are clear and communicate what the purpose is for 2026, then I think the fans will be on board with just about whatever you do. Mason Windu commenting here saying the Cards will move on from Donovan and Arenado if they can. Here's something I will say. What Nolan Gorman has done for you in the past 2.5 to 3 months has the potential, if he continues, to completely change what they initially would have done. Because I think that a lot of people would have said that, yeah, Nolan Gorman, it's a lost cause. It's not going to work out. Can't figure it out. But because he's been able to put it together and find himself a little more here in the past couple of months, not a little more, he has been able to find himself an OPS well over 800, nearing for 3 months now. Because he's been able to find his bat again and provide power, something this Cardinals team doesn't have, you all of a sudden wonder if Brendan Donovan is a little bit more expendable. He's going to bring you, if you want to get good pitching, no one's going to bring you in more value than Brendan Donovan at this trade deadline. Everyone else that you have the potential of moving on from, is not going to get you major league pitching. Brendan Donovan is probably the only one that I'm confident can get you a major league pitcher that you feel like can contribute in this rotation right now. Lars Nootbaar, I don't think can. I don't know if Nolan Gorman can. Jordan Walker, maybe, but I don't know if he can at this point right now. So I agree with you as far as how important just messaging will be. I completely agree with you there. Fairfax commenting and saying Gorman's defense is a liability. Yes, at third base it is. It's been pretty consistent when he's played second base. Would they move him back to second base and put JJ Weatherholt at third? Potentially, possibly. Weatherholt hasn't played a lot of third base, but Gorman also hasn't had a lot of time at third base consistently in the majors. Mason Windu saying Donovan package with one of the catching prospects should bring back pitching. I think that would make sense. Here's why I mentioned the numbers that I did for Brendan Donovan. Tommy Edman in the offseason, and you could argue if these contracts were overpaying players, but Tommy Edman got 5 years, $75 million, and he's 30 right now. I would argue that Brendan Donovan's more valuable than Tommy Edman. And Ketel Marte got 6 years, $116 million. I would argue that Brendan Donovan is between the two. I would argue that he is more so closer to Edman on the scale of like in between the two. But I think those are two good contracts to kind of look at and say, okay, comps to Donovan, where does he fall in between? I think most would argue he's better than Tommy Edman at this point in his career. He's younger than Tommy Edman. Now, obviously, the Dodgers are in a different spot than the Cardinals in. That has to be taken into consideration. But I don't think that saying that Brendan Donovan could get between 4 and 6, and maybe I reached a little bit. How about I adjust and say 75 to 90? Is that a little more realistic? Now, whether that's with the Cardinals or not is one thing. But if the Cardinals want to extend him, it's going to cost them a pretty penny.
Right. And I understand the hesitance for at least that kind of player to go that length of years and that amount of money. You're talking about the LA Dodgers extending Tommy Edman. That's a tax write-off for them. And that is their brand to push their chips in and have this potential World Series window open for as long as they possibly can.
Sure.
We're going to pivot just right now to talk about what smart fans like you do, and that's play DraftKings. I'm punching the buttons now, Ethan. Do you see that? Do you like that?
I do. We're jumping to a whole new level. I almost was thrown off. Like I panicked. I didn't know what to do.
Someone was just pulling the strings behind the curtain. And this is my ad copy. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits, better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Would like to thank you all for tuning in to Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar and brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. Bernie Show on YouTube. If you're new here, a lot of you are unsubscribed to STL Sports Central. It would be a big thing if you could subscribe, leave a comment, leave your thoughts. A lot of people last night were saying some things in the chat, some very funny things. There were some Battlehawks jokes in there because that is how I started here. And then there was also, there's all these people do. All Luke Slabaugh does is shill for ownership. He shills for the DeWitts and John Mozeliak and Chaim Bloom. First of all, got way too much going on today. Got to walk the dog. Got Farmageddon in 10 minutes. I've been microdosing Ozempic and looking at my 200 hinge matches from last night, guys. I got things to do. And I am not like, please, DeWitts, please like me. That's not what we do here. We have good relationships with the people we cover because Cardinals are awesome. St. Louis sports fans are awesome. The Blues are awesome. And we have a soccer team too. So Mike Kennedy starts us in the second block with, we need to move on. And we, talking the Cardinals, need to move on from Nolan Gorman. This statement, I partially disagree with. He has not shown an ability to be an impact MLB hitter. In my opinion, Nootbaar needs to be moved. That's another player, Ethan, I think is like good, but like it's been so stunted with the injuries and just the start and stop. He hasn't quite reached the precipice, but you're going, 27, 28 years old. Like you're just entering your prime there. And even Ali Marmol said a couple nights ago, it doesn't have a good feel yet for what Lars Nootbaar can be, just because he had those 5 straight multi-hit games, goes 0 for 5 last night. And Mike Kennedy also vouching to keep Donovan. This has happened with multiple players with the Cardinals. I think back to Dylan Carlson. I think to Jordan Walker's rookie year. And now I think of Nolan Gorman as well. They come up after tearing the cover off the ball at AAA Memphis. They hit at a good rate when it comes to either contact or power. And then somehow the progression is stunted. For Jordan Walker, there was all that clamoring that, he needed to hit for more power, and then he was sent down for, unexplicable reasons and never quite got his stroke back. Gorman, when he first came up, his bat profiled so well at second base. He was hitting for power, striking out more than you probably should. And Nootbaar, it's just been these starts and stops and inconsistencies that have plagued the Cardinals all year.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, right, and I understand the questioning, right? When all these guys really start, when you look at this roster right now, I mean, there's the number of guys in the lineup that you're not really happy with the overall production that you're seeing consistently of recent is pretty small, probably right now, which is a good thing. But that doesn't mean that all of them can stay, right? At some point, the value that these guys are providing right now, the improvements that they are making, at some point, it's not going to be maybe we should consider like not trading them now. Maybe it's instead like, they're improving their value for the market. And that's what some of these guys are doing. Now, do we know which ones for sure? No, but as you mentioned earlier, there's a whole lot of redundancy. There's a lot of guys, corner, outfield, first base, DH. Way too many guys categorized into that. And you can count up all the different guys that do, and you could say, yeah, at least a couple of them need to be cleared out. At least a couple. I mean, I know we haven't seen it since, so I'm curious as to what exactly this is going to look like. We've seen it 2 or 3 times. Ivan Herrera in left field. I still think that that's something they're going to probably push pretty hard for here down the latter stretch going into next year. Say what you want about it defensively, but if they want to keep around Nolan Gorman, Alec Burleson, Wilson Contreras types, you cannot have Ivan Herrera slated as your everyday designated hitter, and he's not going to catch. So that with Herrera potentially moving to the outfield, that's one less spot. So there's going to have to be some clearance at some point. Mason Windu commenting here saying the Cardinals are ushering in a new era with Bloom. What will the fans think of it in year one? He is pretty much the same manager, same coaches, and almost the same team, which is a good question. What I will say is that once again, going back to it's all about the messaging. We heard 3 different messages in the offseason about what this team was going to be this year. And it felt like the final product was a mix of all 3 of them for like what they were going to be. Be clear in what the point of this year is. Show that in the offseason moves that you make. And I think that the fans will be much more on board with this style of team, because it's not emphasizing that they're there, like that they're at the point that they want to be at. But I think if you are able to say like, hey, like this is where we're heading, this is what we're going for, this is what we're trying to do, like to get there, I think fans will be much more on board with that.
I'm with you 100%. Going into a contract year with Ali Marmol next year would be kind of the worst of all possible worlds, especially given the makeup of this roster. But one, it kind of feels very Division I college, like if a coach, football or otherwise baseball, goes into a season with 1 year left on the deal, it doesn't do much in terms of the long-term vision or messaging that you want to get your fan base or a booster donor based on as well. And what are fans? They do fund your lifestyle. Like you can't exist without the fans.
Yeah.
St. Louis fans know that. They are crucial in the next 4 or 5 years of this team. And that's what we want ultimately, is the Cardinals to go on an extended run for deep postseason contention. To your point, last block, I forgot to mention JJ Weatherholt, who again, shortstop, left side of the infield. Like there's going to be a reckoning here. A lot of this would have been solved if Wilson Contreras had worked out as a 5-year investment at catcher, because then you're throwing out the possibilities of a Burleson and Gorman at first base, or Herrera even, and trying to make people fit in positions that profile better for their skill set. I remember when Contreras came up with the Cubs back in 2016. And a couple years later, they experimented with him out in left field, and it was all right. I don't think the Cardinals would ask him to do that, because he is kind of the free agent that they've spent on so far. So this is kind of a mess, and it's not one that anyone is envious to clean up. It's up to Hein Bloom and company to make that happen, and it demands bold, persistent action this offseason. It demands to raise some eyebrows, and it's going to be controversial. If you want the Cardinals to be great again, you've got to cut ties with some people that are fan favorites, that are your favorite player might be expendable. I think that's ultimately the thing. I've had the conversation the last few shows about who is the Cardinals' best player, like who is the guy. And the metrics, wins above replacement would have you think Mason Wynn because of the glove, and also, league average bat right now, potential to get a lot better. And we see that, like, that's a good piece to have up the middle. But other than that, there's not one guy that jumps off the page or jumps to life, which I think is kind of what Cardinals fans are used to from the Jocketty and early Mozeliak years. And hopefully they can develop the next, three-headed monster, whether it's Edmonds, Roland, Pujols, that type of deal, for Gen Z and beyond. And the Cardinals carry on. They have an 11:10 a.m. first pitch tomorrow. Left-hander Matthew Liberatore going up against his former club, Tampa Bay Rays, down there at the Steinbrenner Field. It's on FanDuel Sports Network Midwest. Libby, the left-hander, against right-hander Ryan Pepio. You'll recall, Ethan, about a year and 13 days ago, Liberatore had his best outing as a Cardinal down in Tampa. 8 scoreless innings, struck out 7, I believe, only 2 hits. And it was Matthew Liberatore, as we had never seen him before, had a really good stretch early this season, and an exciting arm to keep in the rotation for next year.
It helps when your mic isn't muted, doesn't it? You've seen a lot of encouraging things that give you optimism about his future. You hope it's a building block. You hope that it's a step in the right direction. I think it has been. Got to figure out eventually the fatigue issues. It'll be interesting to see how the Cardinals handle him here in these final several weeks of the season. But Matthew Liberatore did something for your organization early in the year that if the Cardinals wouldn't have given him another shot as a starter, as a long-term starter, you look at this starting rotation, and you're starting to ask some serious concerning questions about where it's going if you're trying to build more from an organization, right? And so what they have been able to see and what Matthew Liberatore can be, I think, is going to go a really long way in how they view just their in-house starting pitching as a whole, what it looks like for next year. But there's a lot of, as mentioned, there's a lot of questions. As far as short term, you hope that you can get the Matthew Liberatore that you saw against Tampa Bay a couple seasons ago, back in 23. So that was the first time I think you looked at Libby and you said, "Oh, okay, all right, perhaps there's still something there." And I think you saw last year a stepping stone in the sense of this is a guy that was a really good piece in the bullpen, consistent stuff. And another continued stepping stone this year towards being a consistent, 3 in your rotation. So we'll see what happens tonight. Hopefully, like I said, he's able to have another solid start. What I'm once again amazed at, or excuse me, tomorrow, not tonight. What I'm amazed at, Luke, is that we just 35 minutes of Cards content, and they're not even playing today. They don't even have a game today. It's a Saturday, and you got 35 minutes of Cards Talk here on a day where we couldn't even talk about the game. How about that?
Ethan, that is the power of friendship.
Mm.
And also, I understand we got things to do today. We got things to do today. That was 2 years ago that Liberator had that 8-inning start against Tampa. My bad. Yeah, we can wrap things. We can wrap things. I know you got things to do. I got things to do. I want to say thank you all for joining us here on Card Central 365. 11:10 first pitch tomorrow as the Cardinals will wrap up their series, try to take it from the Tampa Bay Rays. Be sure to like, subscribe here to Cards or STL Sports Central, rather. We got Cardinals content every day. We got the Bernie Show. Love Bernie Miklasz from my youth. Amazing guy. Randy Carricker, my fearless leader. And daily content for Cardinals, for Blues, for City. A lot of good stuff happening here. Mizzou football coming up as well. I want to say thank you all for tuning in. Have yourself a wonderful Saturday. I will see you on the post game with Sarah Daly tomorrow night. Goodbye.